It is August 21st, 2025. And as we're seeing all of the back and forth right now, right, with the NATO alliance trying to figure out a meeting between Putin and Zelensky, and throwing all of their security guarantees out there that they would require, you have Russia on its end saying, hey, if we want to talk about security guarantees, maybe y'all should start listening to our demands, which have been public for years now. There's a lot of back and forth going on, but I wanted to take a step back today to look at what all of this means for the US, how much all of this has been and could be predicted, and what it could mean for where we're headed. Because as we've seen time and time again, the US gets itself into these places where you have the government and the media convince the American people that they have to go to war. And in this case, we're watching the US continue to beat the war drums against Russia, even as Trump is playing this game of just a third party mediator acting like he's not directly involved. So, what should we be concerned about moving forward? Well, I got into all of the latest with a special guest earlier, so let's take a listen to that conversation now. Joining me now to discuss is Gerald Celente, founder and director of the Trends Research Institute and publisher of the weekly Trends Journal magazine. Gerald, thanks so much for taking the time to join me.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, I'm glad I get to talk to you today. I want to start off with the latest and kind of the aftermath of this major summit between the presidents of the US and Russia that we saw in Alaska nearly 1 week ago. And ever since then, the NATO alliance has been very busy. They've been promoting these so-called security guarantees for Ukraine that they say must be included in a deal to end the war. But those guarantees, while they don't include official NATO membership, they do kind of create a NATO light version, right? They're setting up these quote unquote peacekeeping European troops in Ukraine. They're violating all of the red lines that Russia has set forth. So, given everything that we're hearing, how do you view the current situation? And do you think that an actual deal between really NATO and Russia is possible at this point?
I don't see one coming. And I want to make this really clear. You know, we are political atheists. We don't take sides on anything. We're trend forecasters. We look at things for the way they are, not the way we want them to be. And the problem is that I call the mainstream media in the West prostitutes, media whores that get paid to put out by their corporate pimps and government whoremasters. All you have to do is look back to the facts. I mean, we don't have to go back very far. Let's go back to the Iraq War. And they call themselves the paper of record, the New York Times. I call them the toilet paper of record. They were selling the lies that, Saddam Hussein is getting these aluminum tubes from Nigeria someplace, one lie after another. So going back to the facts, this is the Trends Journal. When it used to be a quarterly, it's a weekly now, back in the spring of 2014. You see how happy that guy is? Mm-hmm. This is the article written by Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, former assistant Treasury Secretary under Ronald Reagan. Washington is driving the world to the final war. World hegemony is not a right America has earned. I'm just going to go on to the quick part of it here. Washington concluded that Russia needed to be confronted with or distracted by problems that would leave the Russian government less confident or able to counter Washington's aggression elsewhere. You ready? Ukraine presented the perfect opportunity for Washington to advance its hegemonic agenda. In a speech at the National Press Club last December, which means December 2013, and anybody could Google this up, Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland, this is the Victoria Nuland that's caught on the cell phone saying to Jeffrey Pyatt, the little boy that was the United Nations ambassador for the United States, the ambassador to Ukraine from the United States, saying, F you to the UK, we're putting Yats in. That was Yatsenyuk. All right. Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland boasted that Washington had invested $5 billion in non-governmental organizations, NGOs, in Ukraine for the purpose to teach democracy. The United States overthrew the democratically elected government of Viktor Yanukovych in Ukraine in 2014. This is an article, the Sochi Olympics. This is weeks before the United States overthrew the government. Here's the cover, the line underneath it. Leading up to the Sochi Olympics, media and government officials warned of looming terror attacks, hotels in disrepair, filth, yellow drinking water, and homophobes everywhere. The propaganda campaign primed Americans to view Russia unfavorably. And we go on to write how the views of the Winter Olympics plummeted. They taught us to hate Russia all our lives. When I was a kid, they had us hiding under a desk in case an atom bomb went off. Like that was going to make a difference, right? Because those Russians were going to kill us. Going back to this, the people have no facts, no idea of the facts. There's not going to be a peace agreement under the terms that NATO wants or the United States wants, or maybe not the United States under Trump, and Ukraine wants. Russia is not going to give back the land that it took in following the engagement that began on February 24th, 2022. People have no idea that over 15,000 people in the Donbass region were slaughtered by the Ukrainians, and they wouldn't stop. And you don't stop speaking Russian, you got to speak Ukrainian. We forgot about that one. So no, there's not going to be a deal. And when you just look at the news that just came out, the guy Merz, the Chancellor of Germany, Heil Merz, it's one of the covers of our Trends Journal magazine. He wants to send German troops into Ukraine to fight the war. Oh, this is the Germans that killed, over 25 million people in Russia during World War II, Operation Barbarossa? Oh, this is the Germans. You like World War I? No, I like World War II better. Oh, those Germans? This is the Merz with Germany in recession for 2 years, heading for the third. We're borrowing $1 trillion to build up our military, and we're going to build up the infrastructure too so they can hold it back. Okay? You can't make this stuff up. So no, they're not going to come. One of my sayings is when all else fails, they take you to war. The economies in Germany, I'm telling you, they're failing. They're in recession. This was a very strong economic powerhouse for many years. The economies are going way down. You get the people's minds off things when war starts. Want more facts? Let's go to the dot-com bust. Oh, that was in 2000. The NASDAQ lost 80% of its value. 80% almost. What happened next? Oh, 9/11. Oh, yeah, little Georgie Bush. Everybody couldn't stand him. Everything was going down. We're in a recession. 9/11 happens. We're going to get that guy Osama bin Laden dead or alive. 90% of the people swallowed the baloney coming out of that little daddy's boy's mouth. So what I'm saying to you is Europe is going to do everything they can to keep ramping up this war.
Wow. And I appreciate you bringing the facts, right? It's crazy to think what was published back in 2014, how important that still is today, right? We look back and we're like, yep, exactly as they planned it. That's what happened. And that has to be a major concern right now when you look at the US government, when you look at Europe, and you look at the fact that they did it, right? They put all of these sanctions on Russia. They targeted Russia. They launched an all-out proxy war against Russia. They're still fueling it and funding it right now, but yet they're not the ones winning. Russia is in a number of different ways. The first of which is that its economy did not crumble. It's standing strong. It has even stronger relationships with its trading partners like China and India and so on and so forth. So what kind of a position does that put the US in, especially now that we have a president like Donald Trump who campaigned so hard on I will end the Ukraine war in 24 hours. Clearly, not only has he not done that, but there's no real end in sight here that is going to end with Trump signing a deal, making it look as though the US has any kind of a victory here.
Yeah. Before I forget, also, everybody also forgets the deal made with Gorbachev and Bush Sr. that, quote, NATO would not move 1 inch further when the Soviet Union broke up. There were 16 NATO countries back then. Now there are 32. So if Russia was down in Mexico with missiles aimed at America, and the Chinese were up in Canada with missiles aimed at America, wouldn't that make America happy? And again, people have no idea of the facts of what caused this. Again, I launched Occupy Peace. So what I'm doing is not Celente's pro-Russian. I read the comments, the farewell address from George Washington, the first president of the United States, a real man that fought, not like these little guys that love war that couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag that are presidents. And he warns the American people not to get involved in these foreign entanglements. This stuff has been going on for centuries. It's none of our business. We're not going to fix it. We should only protect America. So let's go back to Ukraine. It was part of Russia for how many years? What, 300 and something years? And then Khrushchev came in and he was Ukrainian. And he said, okay, that's a separate country now. Fine, whatever you want to do, do. But why are we involved in this? That's the whole thing in the beginning of it. Why is Europe involved in it? And they're selling the same lie. I'm the same age as Trump, by the way. And I grew up during the Vietnam War. He got 5 draft deferments. But he loves war. He called himself a war hero, actually, a couple of days ago. And by the way, I believe if Trump was in office when this happened back in 2022, the United States would not have supported Ukraine like Biden did. So I believe that about Trump. But going back, the lie that they kept selling us, and I believed it as a young kid, that if we don't stop those commies in Vietnam, the dominoes are going to keep falling and they take over all of Asia. That's the same lie they're selling now, that if we don't stop Russia from taking the land that they have in Ukraine, before you know it, they're going to attack Europe. That's what they're selling now, the same domino theory lie that they were selling back then.
Yeah, and when it comes to that lie, it reminds me of, what you were referencing earlier, talking about the ways in which the US got us into the Iraq War, right? This claim of weapons of mass destruction. And yet, even now, we can look back and we can say, okay, that was false, right? The New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, Fox News, they all lied to us. But yet, we just kind of keep moving forward, right? We then look at the latest reports from them and act as though, oh, we really need to pay attention to this when we've been lied to time and time again, lied into all of these wars, lied about the possibility of ever winning the war in Afghanistan. And now here we are looking at Ukraine with the US still claiming, oh, we have to keep supporting them. They're pushing Russia back, or they're going to eventually take the Donbass back, or so on and so forth. So what do you see when you look at the American people and their sort of outlook on it, how much they are buying from the mainstream media still, that is allowing the media to be successful and to really keep peddling these lies over and over again?
People, I can't use the proper Bronx language, but we say people don't know crap about anything. Anyway, the average person doesn't know what's going on. That Taylor Swift has sex last night. I mean, that's what they know. I mean, they don't know what's going on. And all they do is they listen to pieces of news that from the prostitutes. They have no clue. And all they do is buy the propaganda. As I said, 90%, you could look up the facts, of the people believe little Georgie Bush, a little daddy's boy, born on third base and thought he had a home run. You couldn't get a little moronic little jerk than him. But the people swallow the crap. I'm going to give you facts. Again, as I said, when all else fails, they take you to war. Let's go back to the Great Depression. What happens in July of 1941? Great Depression's going on. President, you could Google this up. Google it up, mainstream media, History Today. Franklin Roosevelt seizes all Japanese assets in America. Huh. How come? Those dirty Japanese invaded French Indochina. Okay, number one, what do I care what the Japanese did in French Indochina? And you're calling it French Indochina? What the hell are the French doing in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia? Oh, we're stealing their rubber, their tin, rape, pillaging. We're the French. We did a great job in Algeria. How do you like us in Morocco? All of these countries, all over the place, invading other countries. Hey, one of my lines, by the way, I'm tired of hearing this crap about the royal family. Oh, you mean where the sun never set on the British Empire? Where they're killing people all over the world? Oh, the latest data came out when they occupied India. They only killed over 400 million people over the time that they were there because of what they did. No, they're not a royal family. If they were Italian, you call them a mafia.
Yeah.
All right? Oh, no, we're the royal family. We know how to steal and pillage better. Bow down, kiss my hand, roll out the red carpet. Now, going back, World War II, the Dutch and the English and the Americans put sanctions on Japan and cut off 3/4 of their global trade and 88% of their imported oil. They only import 100% of their oil. So you cut off their trade. They can't get any oil. I don't understand why they bombed Pearl Harbor. All right? I'm telling you, they're going to ramp this thing up. There's going to be a false flag event, like the Russians bombed a nuclear power plant. They're going to make up something. The people, as I said, here, again, this is the magazine. I'm going to read you another article about how the propaganda to hate the Russians. Ready? This was from Yahoo News when it was big. November 16th, January 16th, 2014. Now remember, this is January. The war breaks out. Ukraine overthrows Yanukovych, I believe, in February.
Mm-hmm.
Security expert. It's not if, but when for Sochi Olympics terror attack. American security consultant Bill Rathborn, well, you could call him Crapborn, hopes that he's wrong about the upcoming Winter Olympics in Russia. But he has more than a hunch that he's not. Quote, the security threat is higher than it's ever been in the history of the Olympic Games, Rathborn told Yahoo News. In my opinion, it's not a matter of whether there will be some incident. It's just a matter of how bad it's going to be. All right? That's the propaganda. So you ask me about what the people think. They hear this stuff and they swallow it. You know, when I was a kid, my first one, I started repeating stuff I heard on the news. My father said to me one time in Italian, a couple of times, Papagallo, parrot. Stop repeating what everybody else is saying and think for yourself. He said that to me enough times where I realized before I say something, I better have the facts. And then when I started to learn things, I said, Pop, I said, why are people, he says, son, take it easy. People have little minds. The masses follow. They always do. And that's what's going to keep happening. So my greatest concern is there's going to be a false flag event that's going to escalate this war.
Yeah, and I think that that is a legitimate concern, right? Especially as we're looking at a situation where the NATO alliance can't keep going at this rate. They're not making enough weapons to sustain Ukraine while at the same time sustaining all of the other projects on their board that they're trying to get to. So when you kind of take a step back and you look at the multipolar world, you look at the fact that, you know, all of these other countries, say Russia, China, India, they've kind of realized, okay, we need to get it together and figure out how to work with each other because the US cannot be trusted And they are going to target all of these different pillars of the multipolar world in any way possible. So, how do you see kind of the state of the multipolar world right now as they're dealing with all of this continued chaos coming from the US?
They're going to unite more. By the way, when Biden put the sanctions on Russia, he said, quote, Putin's going to pay the price. We wrote in the Trends Journal, no, they're not, that that Russia has all of the technological, industrial, high tech. They have all they need to be self-sufficient. And all these companies that are pulling out of Russia at the time, the Russian people are going to take it over. These are very advanced people, technologically, scientifically, philosophically. And matter of fact, John F. Kennedy's speech to graduating students in 1963 at American University, everybody should look this up. It's all about peace. And he said that we should not hate the people in the Soviet Union. He said they suffered more than anyone during World War II. He said they lost over 20 million people. And their factories, farms, and homes, the equivalent of Chicago to the East Coast. And we should not go to war against them because this is his language. If we do, life on Earth will be destroyed in 24 hours. And generations after generations will suffer. That was in June of 1963. June, July, August, September, October, November, Jack, you're dead. They killed him. He was for peace. I have a photograph of me and John Connally. John Connally was the governor of Texas that sat in front of Kennedy and took the bullet in the back. I have a photograph of me, him, and his wife, Nellie, in front of the book depository where Kennedy was killed. Their first time back was 1992, since the assassination. Connally wanted to meet me because in one of my books, Trend Tracking, I had forecast a new third party in 1989. I said 1992, there'll be a new third party, and I mentioned Ross Perot. Anyway, that's why he wanted to meet me. As we're going back into the Anatole Hotel, Connally said to me, I read your book. He says, it's a fine piece of work, and I know your heart's in the right place. He said, well, you don't have a clue what's going on, and neither do the American people. Because if they did, there'd be a revolution in this country.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's what's going on. As I said, they're going to do everything they can to keep ramping up this war. Let's go back again. Now Trump wanted, if you elect me, like you said, I'm going to end this war in 24 hours. And now that I won, he said, before I get into office, I'm going to end this war. Go back now with Trends Journal, go back to my podcast. I said, there's not going to, all of what Trump is, it's the cover of the magazine this week, that truth and consequences. No truth, no consequences coming from Trump, that he was going to have a ceasefire deal. And then he said, no, he wants a total peace agreement. He said it's not going to do this because he said there was going to be a ceasefire deal and a peace agreement with Gaza. And it didn't happen with the Israelis committing that genocide. And by the way, the United States is sending more money now to keep it going. And he also said, we're going to do a deal with Iran. We're going to have a nuclear agreement. And we said, no, they're not. And what happened? The United States bombed them. So it's just a lot of baloney coming out of his mouth. There's not going to be a deal. It's all talk. And going back again, he's the guy that said to NATO, build your defense budget up 5%. And they're doing it. Mm-hmm. And this is the reality of it. Again, this is another one of my books, Trends 2000. They brought me to Virginia Military Institute. This was an international bestseller to talk about New Millennium Warfare. This is going back to 2000. I said, all of this, it's a waste of money to keep building these planes, these ships. It's going to be a whole New Millennium Warfare. It's going to be totally different. I'm going back to this because all the money that they're wasting in building up the military It's ridiculous because the next war is going to be nuclear annihilation. It's a waste of money. And then again, go to your Trends Journal this week, and we have the articles like Porsche. Oh, they're doing lousy in selling cars, right? Oh, now what they're doing? They're getting into the military-industrial complex. One company after another throughout Europe getting into the military-industrial complex. And even that clown boy Merz, I came from BlackRock. Oh, that group. Oh, yeah. 3 companies, by the way, BlackRock, Vanguard, and State Street. 3 companies own 88% of the S&P 500. That's the Merz over there from the BlackRock guys, right? Okay. He calls it the military-industrial complex that they're building. There was a president of the United States, 5-star general, supreme commander of the Allied forces, Dwight D. Eisenhower. He warns the American people that the military-industrial complex is robbing the nation of the genius of the scientists, the sweat of the laborers, and the future of the children. And here we are. As I said, 3 companies own 88% of the S&P 500. I call us nothing more than plantation workers of Slavelandia. The bigs know everything. The numbers are all there. The proof is there. And they're getting bigger. So that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, wow. It is sobering reality, right? For the average American watching, going, oh, okay, that, a good reminder too, I think. And, when we look at what the Trump administration is doing in particular, Trump loves tariffs, and he's made it very clear that, before he came into office, that we were going to see a bunch of tariffs. But what we've seen is this sporadic doling out of, you get a tariff and you get a tariff, and then he's trying to make all of these trade deals. I can't even keep up. But when he's targeting India and he's saying, India, I'm going to double the tariffs on you because you bought Russian oil and we told you not to. And then he's coming over here with the EU and he's got a deal going on here. I mean, not only is it not sustainable, but for the average American, we haven't even started dealing with the consequences of the policies that Trump is putting into place right now. So, what are your concerns when it comes to these tariffs, how they could hit the American consumer, but also how they could be used to further isolate the US as other countries decide to work together rather than having to deal with the US?
As I said earlier, I'm a political atheist, and we only look at the facts. It's not what you like, what you want, what you wish for. You asked before we went on the air. You asked me where I am. I'm up in Kingston, New York. It was the first capital of New York State. By the way, the British burnt it down after the Battle of Saratoga. We used to have Gant shirt factories up here, shirt factories all over the place. This is a T-shirt that I did back in 1992.
Wow.
See that?
Uh-huh.
Beware of Slick Willie. Little Bill Clinton, a little nobody from Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
He brought, get those jobs out of America, bring them to Mexico. NAFTA. You don't want to pay the people that money. You can make more money going down there. Little Billy Clinton, that wasn't worth a penny. Look it up. He's worth about $130 million now.
Mm-hmm.
All right? It's called payoffs. Morons and imbeciles call it campaign contributions and donations. He sucked the jobs out of America. As I said, we're nothing more than plantation workers of Slavelandia. When I was a young man, there were things called grocery stores, hardware stores, stationery stores, drug stores, shoe stores. Now they're all chains. Let's go back to we talked about the media. How about that one? 1996 Federal Communications Act. Get rid of all those companies that own thousands of individual companies, own radio stations, newspapers, TV stations. Now 6 companies control 92% of the American media. Oh, this is the Bill Clinton that gave us the Glass-Steagall Act, too. Oh, yeah, the banksters. This is the Bill Clinton that pushed what little Jimmy Carter, the peanut farmer, started, interstate banking. Back in the day, banks were not allowed to go out of their state. Bank of America was only in California. Going back to Bill Clinton, going back to tariffs, going back to all of this, that was the guy that started it. This is the guy that brought China into the World Trade Organization. Back in the day, there were manufacturing companies all over America, and people were earning money. Now let's get in the facts. Look at China's GDP from 1970 to 2000. It's like this. They get into the World Trade Organization, whoop, shoots up. Now, hey, who sells more EVs now than anybody else in the world? Oh, the Chinese. And keep going. All the products they sell. The Western manufacturers, let's go to China. We get all that cheap labor. They gave China all the heavy industry and high technology that they never had. They sold out. We were talking about Germany earlier. All of these companies were making a ton of money when they first moved into China 25 years ago. They were selling their cars. They were making a fortune. The American companies, the Western companies, whole different game now. So going back to tariffs, I agree with Trump on them. Bring back the manufacturing jobs to America. But he keeps changing the line. Every day it's a different line. And going back to putting tariffs on India. You don't put, what he's doing to Brazil, 50% tariffs, because they're putting that guy Bolsonaro in jail. What the hell do I care about that? Right. That has nothing to do with me. But again, you go back to India. Only 2% of India's GDP comes from exports to the United States. It doesn't make any difference to them. Oh, their rug prices are going to go up. Big deal. You know. Again, I agree by building the manufacturing back up to America. And I was opposed to NAFTA and opposed to bringing China into the World Trade Organization. And just to show you the hypocrisy of these slime ball politicians. Again, I talked about the Vietnam War. Those dirty commies, if we don't stop them. Hey, wait a minute. Aren't the commies still running Vietnam? And they're our second largest importer of clothing, furniture, a whole load of stuff. Hey, shut up. We're making a lot of money, all right? Same thing with China. Oh, we're supposed to hate the Chinese. Oh, yeah, but we're bringing manufacturing to it. We could make a lot of money, so shut up. It's the hypocrisy.
Yeah, it really is. And it's so interesting how it's a reminder that it changes based on what their goal is at the moment, right? Who are they wanting to target at the moment? Then you can hate them. Then you can follow all of the propaganda. Oh, but if it's a country that they want to be their friend, then you have to hop on board or else you hate freedom and democracy, I guess. I know that there is certainly a lot at stake here all around. And I always appreciate the work that you're doing. I appreciate you taking the time to join me today to break down and explain some of the latest here. Gerald Celente, founder and director of the Trends Research Institute and publisher of the weekly Trends Journal magazine. Thank you so much for your time and insight.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all that you do.
If anything in this video resonated with you, be sure to like it, share it with your friends, leave a comment. And as always, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to keep up with all of my work, make sure that you're subscribed to my page on Substack. That's rachelblevins.substack.com. That's where you'll find ad-free videos and new weekly episodes of my exclusive series for paid subscribers called Sanction. You can also check out Sanction over on my page on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Rachel Blevins. As always, thank y'all so much for all of your support, and I'll see you next time.